How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Knicks. I'm your host, Dylan Backer. I'm joined by my brother and co-host, Justin Backer. And today we're going to talk about a player that hasn't really been talked about a lot with the Knicks this offseason, but it's an interesting one. It's Brandon Ingram. He's playing on Team USA currently with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, so I think that's an interesting thing to note right there. But I think Brandon Ingram is an interesting player to talk about. I know, Justin, you wrote an article about Brandon Ingram the other day that was put on EmpireSportsMedia.com. So without further ado, I'm kind of just going to pass it off to you and kind of let you start this off. So let me know what you think about Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, as you alluded to, I wrote an article about Brandon Ingram the other day for EmpireSportsMedia.com. And in it, we discussed a mock trade that we saw on, I believe, NBAanalysis.net, and the mock trade read it was RJ Barrett, 2 first-round picks, and a pick swap for Brandon Ingram. Now, that mock trade, I think, is phenomenal. I think that's great. That's an upgrade over Barrett for sure. Ingram is a much better player than Barrett, as we know. Ingram's only 26. He's played for quite a while now, 7 seasons in the NBA, but he's still only 26. He's just now, hitting the prime age, if you will. So, and I think that's great. And as you alluded to, he's on Team USA right now with Brunson and Hart. So, some chemistry is being built right there, as I've alluded to in the past on other episodes. Team USA builds chemistry, as we know. So I think, I'm not starting any rumor, but hey, that's nice to know. And, but yeah, as a player, I think Brandon Ingram is a phenomenal scorer. This is a guy who he was drafted by the Lakers a few years ago or whatever. And it was kind of like middle of the pack. You know what I mean? Like, really wasn't sure what his potential was. He had a lot of potential, but really wasn't reaching it. And then he gets traded over to the Pelicans, and he becomes a full-fledged star. You know what I mean? As a Pelican, he's averaging 23 points a game across 4 seasons with the Pelicans, that's great. You know what I mean? And, something I also want to touch on is that he's phenomenal in the playoffs. You know what I mean? I know he's only played one playoff series, and it was against the Phoenix Suns in 2022. I don't know if you remember that, but that Pelicans team was like kind of sneaky that year, and they almost knocked off the Suns, who were like a favorite to win it all. Brandon Ingram was a big reason for that. He averaged 27 a game in that series. He was phenomenal. So, I think having another big game performer would be a really nice addition to the Knicks, alongside Jalen Brunson. You have Jalen Brunson and Brandon Ingram on the same team in the playoffs. Whew. Oh, man. I know we talk about Randall's struggles, but if Randall can even be half as good as he is in the regular season, and you have those two playing the way they do in the playoffs, that would be insane. We'd be finals contenders with that, So, I think Brandon Ingram that's one of my favorite targets, I guess, if you will, for the Knicks to address that shooting guard, small forward kind of gray area right now. That's one of my favorite players. I know we talk a lot about like OG Anunoby, Paul George, guys like that. Not a lot of people have talked about Brandon Ingram, and I don't really know why. I know, the Pelicans, a weird team. They drafted Zion Williamson a couple years back, and, they looked like they had a core for the future that they could, be title contenders or something. But Zion has never been healthy. That team it's been shortcoming after shortcoming since he's been there. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to make changes soon. And if they do, if Brandon Ingram becomes available, the Knicks should get all over that. They should jump on that immediately. They should be front runners to get him, So basically, I'm over here clamoring for Brandon Ingram. I think that would be awesome. That's a very welcome addition in my eyes. So, I kind of want to hear what you have to say, though, about that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on some very solid points, especially the playoff performances. Yes, he only played in one playoff series, but, quite frankly, outside of Jalen Brunson, the Knicks don't really have like that playoff performer. Yes, of course, having one is always a luxury because a lot of teams don't even have one. But if you want to be a championship contender, you got to have your whole team clicking instead of just one guy. And if you can get another guy who is also clicking in the playoffs, such as Brandon Ingram, that'd be very good for the offense. That'd be very good overall. They would score a lot better. And I think, too, that something I want to mention, too, Brandon Ingram brings some size. He's a pretty tall guy at the wing position, and the Knicks don't have, like, a ton of size in the backcourt. They're kind of known to being a little smaller in that department, especially in the second unit as well, because they have, Josh Hart and DiVincenzo kind of manning that. They're thinking about having Josh Hart and RJ Barrett be a backup 4. That should kind of tell you right there how small the team is in general. And I'm not saying that, you add Brandon Ingram, all of a sudden it's a 10-man rotation. No, you would unfortunately probably have to part ways with RJ Barrett. And for some Knicks fans, they might not want to do that. RJ Barrett's only 23 years old. He's young. We've seen what he can be. We've seen the potential he's got. So I understand if some Knicks fans don't want to make that kind of move. I personally think Brandon Ingram is an upgrade over RJ Barrett. Like you said, I agree with it. I think he's a better scorer. I think his game is more well-rounded and polished than RJ Barrett. And if the Knicks want to win a championship, they kind of got to add a guy who has a bit of a polished game already instead of kind of banking on another player's development. That's at least what I think. If some other people disagree with that, and that's fine. But with that being said, if there's one concern I would have with bringing in Brandon Ingram, it's the mock trade that you mentioned, the draft picks. That's a bit of capital to drop off. Yes, it's 2 first rounders and a pick swap, but it is a bit. And if they want to go after a guy like Joel Embiid later on next offseason or something like that, if you were to make that kind of trade for Brandon Ingram right now, that could potentially take you out of the running for Embiid. It sounds some people might say, oh, well, they'll still have X amount of picks and stuff. Even just losing 2 or 3 picks in a different trade can take you out of the running because a different team might have more assets or more intriguing assets for the 76ers to go, oh yeah, we'll take that over this offer. We'll definitely take that. So it's something that the Knicks really got to consider if they want to go after someone like Ingram and make an improvement in the wing department, or if they want to go for the home run ball, wait until Joel Embiid possibly becomes available next offseason or something like that, because we all know there's a bunch of drama going on in Philadelphia right now with the whole James Harden and stuff. So everyone's kind of just waiting and seeing how that's going to impact Joel Embiid. So with that being said, if I'm the Knicks, I wouldn't rush to make this type of trade for Brandon Ingram. I think it would be an upgrade. Don't get me wrong. I think basketball-wise, it makes sense to do it, but I also wouldn't rush to do it because I do think there is a good chance that they can land a good superstar in the future, such as the Joel Embiid. I think they're in the best position to make that kind of move. I feel like that is the move they need to make rather than, make this kind of move, let's say, just to make a trade, kind of satisfy the fans like, oh, look, we made some upgrades. And yes, it would be an upgrade, but at the same time, when there is a potential superstar that could be out there very, very soon, maybe it's worth being a little patient. Some people might disagree with that. Some people might say, no, I want to make moves right now. It doesn't always work that way. If you make moves too soon, those always tend to backfire. They usually do 90% of the time, so you got to make the right moves. I think about it. I think, to wrap up my point, basketball wise, bringing in Ingram makes perfect sense. I think he'd be a great fit. I think he would fit well alongside Brunson and Randall. I think the scoring would be, very, very 3-dimensional. I think you would get some great all around scoring just everywhere on the court. I feel like there'd be no weak spot. But when you're looking at the business aspect and you're thinking about getting a superstar in the future, I want to hold off on it a little bit. I know I kind of presented 2 different takes there on it, so I kind of just want to hear what you think about those. Whether you think maybe they should go ahead and make this move now, to be more aggressive, or if they, should continue to be patient, see if there's a better star that becomes available. I kind of want to hear what you guys say about that, so go for it.
Well, I agree and disagree with everything you just said there. I agree that making a trade like this would take you out of the running for a superstar, which would suck. You want to get the superstar, but you're gonna bank on the superstar, getting traded to your team. You know what I mean? You're banking on something that's like a long shot, really. You know what I mean? So it's tough to say. It's a gray area a little bit. I don't think they should rush to go trade for Brandon Ingram. I'm not saying that, but if Brandon Ingram were to become available, I mean, that's a clear upgrade. I don't see why not. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they shouldn't trade for Brandon Ingram because Joel Embiid might become available. Keyword might become available. He's not available right now. So, what I mean? I'm not saying Brandon Ingram is either, but, there's a more likely chance that Brandon Ingram would be easier to acquire than Joel Embiid. You know what I mean? I mean, look at the Damian Lillard situation. He made it very, very obvious where he wants to play, and he still has not been moved. You know what I mean? He's still on the Portland Trail Blazers. He made it very, very obvious he wants to play for the Miami Heat and only the Miami Heat. He's still on the Portland Trail Blazers, and we're a month or 2 away from the regular season now. So, it's not a guarantee that these superstars ever get moved. So I don't know if playing the waiting game is necessarily the right move to do. It's a gray area. Like I said, I agree and disagree. Me personally, I don't know how much longer they can really play the waiting game. You know what I mean? It's fine. This offseason, fine. They don't need to go rush and make any crazy move. They're fine for this next season. But 2024, are we still going to be like, and let's not do anything because that guy might become available one day. I think I don't know. That's almost like too patient. Like you're overthinking a little bit. You can make a clear upgrade, but you don't want to because I don't know, Embiid. They think he's a playoff choker and whatnot. You know what I mean? So Brandon Ingram is not a playoff choker. So I'm sure I'm gonna have some people on my side here that are saying, oh, I don't want Embiid. So yeah, good take, Justin. So that I agree and disagree with everything you said. So
Yeah, no, I think you hit on good points. I do. Like you said, it's not like a guarantee Joel Embiid will be available. So I understand if like you think being patient and waiting for something that isn't 100% guaranteed is not necessarily the right move. It's a valid point. It's 100% a valid point. At the same time, though, you could say the same thing about Brandon Ingram. There's no guarantee the Pelicans are going to want to get rid of him, especially after they, brought back CJ McCollum, and it looks like they're trying to get something going on there in New Orleans. They haven't traded Zion Williamson yet either, so it looks like they're still thinking about whether they can really get something going in New Orleans. So, at the same time, we can't necessarily sit here and say, oh, it's definitely guaranteed that Brandon Ingram is on the move as well. You know what I mean? So I agree with what you said. And, it's like right now, I think like what you said, I agree with you on this point. This offseason, I think they're perfectly fine with their little patient approach. I still think even with this patient approach, they still made upgrades. They got DiVincenzo. That's already an upgrade right there. They brought back Josh Hart. Those are upgrades, right? You have a full season now with those two on your roster, including the other guys that got you to the playoffs last season. That's an upgrade. Of course, it's nothing substantial, but it's an upgrade, right? Your team is definitely better than what it was last season. Even if it's not going to be like all of a sudden you're a first seed, you're still a playoff team, right? But, if they, like you said, if it's 2024 and they still haven't done anything, maybe it's time to start questioning what they're doing, because at the end of the day, they have a bit of a window here. You have Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and as of right now, RJ Barrett tied to your team for the next 3 to 4 years, right? And Josh Hart as well. That is pretty much your championship window. You have that core right there, your best players right there for the next few years. That window, that's your time to try to win a championship. You have these guys at your prime, at their best playing stage of their career and on team friendly deals. Eventually, they're going to hit the market and want more money, and they're going to get more money because they're very valuable as players, right? So, this is their best chance. And they have the assets to make the trades and stuff to improve the roster. And Brandon Ingram is a name that stands out. But like I said, it takes you out of the running for a superstar, and it really just depends if the Knicks want to go after a superstar or like an all-star level talent like Brandon Ingram. I don't think Brandon Ingram is a bad player by any means. I want to make that clear too. I think he is still an upgrade over RJ Barrett. I think it is an upgrade. I think the team will be a whole lot better if they were to add Brandon Ingram. It just means that if you were to trade for him right now, that you're probably out of the running for a superstar down the road. And it really just depends what the Knicks want to do. If they want to go for the home run ball or if they think they can build something by making a not necessarily a small trade, but a smaller trade in theory from, a superstar trade. Because we all know if they were to trade for Joel Embiid, you're going to part away with at least RJ Barrett and at least like 4, 5, possibly even 6 draft picks because he's that good of a player. So, it's going to be a lot, right? It's a hefty asking price. Also, it should be worth noting the Knicks passed up on guys like Paul George and James Harden because of their asking price. So of course, like you mentioned, I should acknowledge this too, and I can acknowledge this even if I didn't mention it before. That if they might even say they don't want to trade for Joel Embiid because maybe they don't want to get rid of all those assets. Maybe they feel like it's better building more with their foundation they have right now rather than just shelling it all out for a star. Maybe that's how they feel. I obviously don't know. We're not in the Knicks front office every day, so we have no idea what they're thinking about. But at the end of the day, I think it really is just dependent on what direction they want to head towards. Whether they want to win right now in 2023, make a superstar move right now, or if they're willing to kind of play the waiting game a little bit, make themselves look attractable, try to make a run. But if they don't, they can make a run at a superstar next offseason. It really just depends what viewpoint they're headed towards. I think at the end of the day, though, to kind of wrap up the point on Brandon Ingram specifically, I'm all for it. I honestly am. I would be open to a trade for Brandon Ingram any day of the week. I think he's that good of a player. I think he's on the rise too. I think, if you bring him in to the system that the Knicks have going on right now too, he would only get better. And I think the offense would be more dynamic, more fun to watch. I think they'd be more competitive. I think a lot of good things would happen, but there are risks to it. You would lose, your 23-year-old if you want to call him a star, you can call him a star. I don't call him like a star, but I call him a potential star because he has potential, but he's not necessarily a star just yet. So I'm nervous, but so there's a lot that comes to it. There's a lot behind it. I think, Ingram is an upgrade, though. I want to make that clear. And that's kind of all I got to say about Brandon Ingram, though. I don't know if you have any final thoughts on anything I just said, but that's pretty much where I stand. It's kind of 50-50. There is leeway for them to kind of make this move, but there's also reason for them to hold back and not exactly rush it just yet. So I just want to hear if you got any final thoughts on it, though.
Yeah, my final thoughts are basically I think Ingram is a clear upgrade over what we have at the wing position right now that would immediately make us better. And I think that's kind of the whole goal instead of just playing the waiting game, blowing up the roster for one guy. You wouldn't have to trade the farm for Brandon Ingram. You know what I mean? That should be stated because Joel Embiid would cost us a whole bunch of draft picks and a whole bunch of our young talent that we have. So that's a risk you're taking right there, blowing up the roster for one guy. You know what I mean? Brandon Ingram would not do that. He would make us better. We wouldn't have to get rid of nearly as much. So I think that's important. You get better without getting rid of too much. So, to wrap this up, really, I would be open to Brandon Ingram, as I've stated the whole episode. I would be very, very open to it. I would be welcoming it, to be honest. And yeah, I think clear upgrade it would make the Knicks a much more dynamic offensive team. I feel like they kind of struggle sometimes, like to really have a dynamic offense. Their offense can feel predictable at times. We really only have two star guys, if you will. Randall and Brunson, who can take over a game, really. But the offense can get predictable, as we've seen over and over again. I feel like adding Ingram, a guy who's a legitimate 3-level scorer, doesn't have a bad shot, doesn't really have a shot that he doesn't like. So I feel like adding a guy like that would make the team a lot more dynamic offensively. And yeah, that's kind of just my final thoughts on that. I think if he were to become available, I think they should do it. That's my final point. If he were to become available, I think they should do it.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on good points yet again. I know I haven't been as strong on Ingram this episode, but I would like to point out I'm not against it by any means. I think it's an upgrade. I do think he would be, a very welcome addition. I just worry about their long-term output, whether how that'll affect them, how their approach in the market in the future. And I worry about that because you of course want to become the best of the best if you want to win a championship. And if the other teams around you are getting better and you only get marginally better, that's where you start to question yourself a little bit. But I will, point out, like you said, I agree with this. If Ingram is available, I do think they should at least, call them up and see what they can get out of it. I do think it's worth, negotiating for him. I do think it's worth going after. I think he's that good of a player. Like you said, the offense would be so much more dynamic. Very three-dimensional, all 3-level scores. You'd have so much, variety on offense that'd be pretty hard for defenses to find a way to stop it. So I do think it would be an upgrade 100%. I wonder if the Pelicans asking price would be a little more steep than the mock trade that you proposed earlier in the episode. So that's also something to consider. But there's a lot of things to consider about it. But with that being said, we'd love to hear what you guys think about Brandon Ingram in the comments section below. Do you think he would be, an upgrade to this team? Me and Justin think he would, but do you guys agree with that or disagree? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think he's worth trading for? Do you think he's worth giving up some assets for? We really would like to hear what you guys got to say. But with that being said, you could check us out on all of our platforms. We're on this YouTube page. We're on X/Twitter. I call it X, but it's, everyone just calls it Twitter. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on all those platforms. The audio versions of these podcasts are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating on those. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And with that being said, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.